What is International Jurists? A conversation with Federico Vasoli and Domenic Pini. That is our topic for today. Welcome to the Lawyers and Mediators International show and podcast, where we discuss law and conflict resolution topics to educate both professionals and everyday people. Catch regular episodes on YouTube and anywhere you get your podcasts. Just remember, nothing in these episodes constitutes legal advice, so be sure to talk to a lawyer, as cases are fact-dependent. Hi, everyone. This is attorney Mac Pierre-Louis. I'm a lawyer, mediator, arbitrator working for Florida and Texas. And welcome back to the LMI podcast. And this conversation is going to be with Federico Vasoli and Domenic Pini. And people might be familiar with Federico, who's on the screen, because he's been on this podcast for years now, talking about business law and international space. So it's good to have you back, Federico. And I want you to go ahead and introduce our guest today, Domenic Pini, so that we can get into this conversation about this organization that you guys are both members of, which is International Jurists. So, Federico, tell us, how are you doing? And bring on Domenic.
Mac, as cliche as it may sound, I'm really happy to be back. Thank you so much for having us. It's been a while, and I am glad to be back on the platform, LMI, and a big hi to you and everybody that is contributing to this project, as well as to our audience. So it is a pleasure to bring somebody else on board this time. Domenic Pini, he's a friend. He's got a strong connection with Italy, as his name suggests, and he's a lawyer, solicitor of England and Wales, founder of Pini Franco LLP, an established law firm in London, in England, former barrister and friend, and together with me, he's within the management committee team of the Law Alliance International Jurists. He's been in International Jurists longer than me, so he can tell more about the alliance that I gladly joined a couple of years ago upon his invitation. So I'm very grateful for that, Domenic. Thank you for your friendship. Thank you for your trust. And please introduce yourself, add something, and correct me if I said anything wrong.
No, I think you've said everything right. There's nothing that I could add, except that it's great to see Mac and you on this podcast. I think it's going to be an enjoyable experience for me to join you guys. So thank you very much for the intro.
Yes. And I'm going to share your website, Domenic, just because I like people to kind of know, where they can reach you if they wanted to get in contact.
Yeah.
And by the way, as somebody who loves website design, I got to say you have a beautiful one because the intro is fantastic.
Thank you.
I love that.
Thank you.
I have an eye for these things. But anyway, so you guys are part of International Jurists, and I was not too familiar with the organization until Federico introduced me to it some time ago. I think it's been at least a year or so, and I understand the kind of work that you guys do. But I wanted to introduce International Jurists to the masses out there, so people can know why is it important, what value does it bring to people and their clients, to lawyers who are out there in businesses and the international space. And so why don't we start off, Federico, what is International Jurists?
Well, International Jurists is an alliance of law firms across the world. The general rule is that you only have one representative per jurisdiction, and the selection of members is by invitation only, based on existing members' knowledge of prospective members. The idea is to share knowledge and across members, and to share work across them. So I'm a new member, and I have thoroughly enjoyed the short journey that I've had so far with International Jurists. I have exchanged a couple of cases with other fellow members. Domenic has been in the organization much longer than me. I was actually part of other similar organizations in the past. I mean, this is not the only, and still am, of another network called Legal Mondo. There is a much looser network of firms all over the world where is no exclusivity. So there are several of these organizations around the world, but I am particularly enjoying being part of this one. I don't know if, Domenic, you want to add something about the past and how the organization is developing, and also about its legal structure, since there is a company in England that manages that.
Yeah, I think, basically, as lawyers, we're all lawyers. It's to do with relationships. It's to do with contact, understanding, being aware, having an understanding of other people, and where those other people are in different jurisdictions to your own, you get to know what the issues are, which are affecting them. So international jurists, for me, represented an ability, a possibility that I could sort of understand what's going on in Romania or what's going on in Bulgaria, what's going in South Africa at the time, to understand and have a sort of larger, broad width understanding of the issues confronting our colleagues in other jurisdictions. If I sit here in front of you in this screen in London, I could sit here the whole of the year just doing cases after cases, and advising, but I would have no real understanding of the broader picture. And I think for me, it's important personally to understand what's going on around the world and what the issues are uh, for my colleagues, both legal and non-legal, what the issues are in their jurisdictions. So International Jurists offered me a platform, not simply for referrals, but it was principally to getting to know people and to getting to know, what is troubling them, what is helping them. So for me, it was a journey of, I know it sounds a bit sort of cliched, but it was a journey of realization of what was happening in the world outside my little bubble.
Well, quick question for you. So, just the basics. When was IJ founded, and where are its headquarters? And finally, do you guys have to speak English as a main language to bring you all together, or does it really matter?
I don't know, Federico, would you like to answer that one?
Well, yes, the last one is yes, English is definitely the working language. Even though at times we find each other speaking Italian, there is a sort of Italian lobby within it.
Mm.
I'm just joking, of course, but I'm Italian and my native language is English. Is sorry, is Italian, of course, and Dominic's Italian is flawless, and the chairman Günther Kreutzer is the honorary consul of Italy in Nuremberg, if I'm not mistaken. In any case, he's based in Germany. He's German national, but his Italian is also very good. And there are some other people some other members whose Italian is not bad at all. So we incidentally find each other speaking Italian to each other. But no, the working language is English. There is a management company for that essentially receives annual fees that takes care of disbursements such as AGMs, related expenses, and so on. And that is established in England, in Leeds, isn't it, Domenic? That's where
No, it's the sort of what do you call it? The legal headquarters, the registered office is in Newcastle, which is in
Sorry, my bad.
Newcastle, northeast England.
Yeah.
But the administrative office is in Nuremberg in Germany. So it's managed from Nuremberg, but the legal representation is in northeast England and Newcastle. And the legal entity, which we all belong to, is it's a private limited liability company, which is established in the United Kingdom. So that's the basis of it. And the reason why it was established in the United Kingdom is because the initiative for international jurists arose out of an English law firm who was active in Europe and got to know German law practices and French law practices. And so they started this idea of grouping together one. It's almost a bit like a Rotary club, really, getting together once a year or more than once a year to just have a chat, have a chat amongst yourselves. And from that early seeds in the 1980s, late 19 or mid 1980s, from that early seeds of sort of getting together, a bit like Rotary and Paul Harris, who founded Rotary. They got together once in a while, and from that grew this idea of expanding out from these 2 or 3 countries to a much broader base. And so that's how it all sort of organically grew.
Does it go back to the 1980s?
Yes, I think it does go back to the 1980s. It goes back to a firm in near Cambridge University, which started the whole thing, and I think it's the 1980s, and then it mushroomed from there. What did they say here? Yeah, so that's how it grew. But it grew, I should emphasize, it grew from the point of view of personal relationships. Personal relationships were the foundation block of the group, and that's what held it together. It wasn't just simply a question, what work can you give me, or what work I can give you. It was, the basis of it was to get to know people, to understand your fellow colleagues, to have trust and confidence in them, and then to be able to work with them as and when the occasion arises. I mean, we've had I won't hide this from you. We've had members where, say, well, I don't get anything out of this organization. I haven't got a piece of work from the organization for years. Why should I remain a member? And that's a valid question. The answer is that it's not simply a question of obtaining work. It's an ability to understand and have a reference point in another jurisdiction if you need it, to be able to exchange internal office information. How are you dealing with the sanctions list? What are your issues on money laundering? On how are you dealing with cryptocurrency when the client wants to pay you in crypto? These are the sort of broad issues which affect lawyers, particularly in the Western Hemisphere, but because of the sanction regime. So it's this exchange of information which is so valuable. And when we have our annual conferences, each time we look at a sort of aspect of practice which affects American law firms, affects law firms in Malta, Vietnam, the United Kingdom. What are the common issues that are causing us issues that we can perhaps benefit by discussing with each other? So that's one of the advantages of an organization of this kind.
Absolutely. Let me add, Domenic, that even though we're recording this episode just after President-elect Donald Trump's victory in the US, and there are therefore trends towards a closing up of big countries like the US. Yes, there's isolationism. It looks like there is isolationism from America's part, but also from China. I was in Shanghai recently, and it looked like a totally different world than it used to be when I used to live there. Totally changed. But nevertheless, the world remains highly interconnected, much more interconnected than it was in the 1980s and 90s. I remember in my old law firm in Milan, doing international law was perhaps dealing from time to time with France or Spain. Now it is really Vietnam, where I'm recording this episode from, and you can see the impact of these geopolitical or political, forget the geo, these political occurrences, what their impacts are in such faraway places like this one. There was a whole piece on the Financial Times this morning, Vietnam Time, about what a Trump presidency would look like for Vietnam, for Southeast Asia as a whole. Not just in terms of security, but also simply in terms of business. Will there be more Americans investing here or not? We don't know, of course. It's just a prediction, but that has an impact on law. Will there be more companies that set up operations in this part of the world? What products would they trade? Services? What about licensing? What about countermeasures taken by other players, and so on and so forth? So I don't want to make it too long, but this is what the impact of these things is.
But this is exactly what I'm trying to say, is that, you know, when we're talking here, it can easily slip into a very mercantilistic approach to lawyers. You know, what's in it for me? You know, transactional. But the question is that when we get together, we're discussing things like, how do you enforce a judgment in a country which is governed by Sharia law, for instance, where interest is not accepted, and so these are issues which we discuss amongst ourselves, because we have these type of cases which cross borders, and therefore the input from other people is essentially very, very important. And so what I'm trying to emphasize in this chat is that International Jurists, and there'll be many, many other organizations, the real benefit of this type of organization is the soft power, it's the ability to understand how we can manage our individual practices by dipping into the experience that other people have in their individual practices. Our colleagues in America, for instance, you know, how they dealing with you know, we had issues to do with you know, during the sanction period, where gas and oil was an issue, and equipment manufactured by America was being exported to countries which were on the sanction list, and these goods were blocked in ports. How do you get these goods out of the ports back to the client after sanctions were imposed? There were all these sort of type of issues, and issues to do with succession, where you have assets which are in America or assets which are abroad, but the death occurred somewhere else. All these cross-border issues which we can benefit from by meeting face to face and saying, look, I've had this, what would you suggest I do, you know, and is there any way that you can help me? So what International Jurists is good at is the ability to exchange and interrelate with each other on legal practice and cross-border issues, which we can have some assistance on by talking to each other. I mean, that's basically what I'm trying to emphasize, is that it's not simply, you know, give me what I want and I'll give you something back. It's actually a bit more, you know, subtle than that. You know?
Yes. No, thank you for that. And so when you guys are having these private talks between between you guys and the different members of the organization, as you're sharing knowledge between different jurists, is it a benefit also to educate the public about the things that you guys are discussing? Because one thing that Federico and I have discussed is the possibility of you or your members coming on and talking to the public about some of the things that are of interest to you, so that you can spread more education and knowledge. What are your thoughts about that?
Definitely. Allow me to step in here. I've participated in only 2 AGMs because I've been a member for 2 years. And on occasion of the first AGM in Dubai, we had as a guest speaker the former, I think he was the governor of the Central Bank of Lebanon, who's now a professor and economist. He's a fantastic guy that lives in Dubai, and he gave us insights on the economics and macroeconomics trends of the region during these troubled times. And more recently, when we had AGM in Dresden, I got to know a city, a fantastic city that I did not know about, even though it is so close to home. That is the so-called equivalent of the Silicon Valley. They call it the Saxony Valley in Germany, to what the Silicon Valley is in the US. It is a powerhouse in terms of technology and attraction of foreign investments in these fields. We got to interact with local politicians. Forget about political views, but they gave us an insight of what that part of Germany is all about and why it is so strong, why that part of the German economy is still quite attractive despite what's going on in Germany. And that is something that I frankly don't know in all my ignorance. So working with a number of tech companies from other continents, I got to know something which is valuable. That is, Germany offers a plus. And why is it that that specific land in Germany is so attractive and others are not? And what can other regions in Europe and elsewhere in the world learn from that region in order to be equally attractive for foreign investments in technology? In Italy, we are lacking technological investments. There have been one recently from Singapore, which is a big exception. It's a big investment, but it's a drop in the ocean, really. What can Italy learn from that? Maybe they don't send a lot of lawyers to Saxony, and I could be a sort of ambassador for these models and can be adopted elsewhere. So absolutely yes, the answer is positive.
Yeah. Domenic, what about you when it comes to educating each other and the public? What are some of the benefits?
I think the benefits are, well, amongst ourselves. I mentioned, this inter law firm exchange of ideas on what I would call global issues which I've mentioned, which are the international compliance system, which is now affecting all of us. Also, there is a sort of I don't want to get involved with this, but there's a quasi political angle to this as well. How justice is carried out in different jurisdictions and what values we attach to justice. How is justice implemented? Is it being affected by undue pressure of a political nature or not? And what should our reaction be as international jurists to this happening? So there have been discussions in the past at our meetings concerning, the independence of the judiciary, and how justice is implemented. So there are larger global issues that we deal with other than the strictly commercial or inter-practice issues. So that is also a legitimate subject matter for discussion, because we all of us, Mac and Federico and I, we all share common certain values as to how we view the law and the equality of the law for people. Obviously, given the cost of litigation, it's not really equal, but I mean the access to justice as a principle has to be based upon equality. So issues like that are also quite high in the discussion agenda, particularly as the world becomes more and more polarized and lawyers are becoming much more the subject of pressure. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a forum for educating ourselves, educating the public, so much as for there to be transparency between us and the consumer, a clear understanding of what our services are, a recourse to any sort of complaint structure if you're not happy with the service that you're being provided, a transparency on pricing, to become an efficient law firm which responds to the consumer's needs, underpins really the structure that we're trying to create within international jurists. And one of the big issues is conflict of interest amongst where you have large law firms like in America. Mine is quite small, so we can look at the issues, but there are there are conflict of interest issues where you may be representing more than one client that are in some way or other conflicted. So I mean, there are all these issues that we should become consumer friendly, speak in language which people understand, be transparent on pricing, be transparent on any issues that arise. At the same time, between ourselves to understand how better to improve our practices through interchange and discussion amongst ourselves.
Okay, and because we're getting out of time, let me ask you guys just a couple questions. Could you speak briefly to the person who might want to join International Jurists? Why should someone join, and how do they get started? Okay, and then the other question is with regards to all the different countries that I'm seeing on the list. I don't see too many in the USA.
No.
Are you guys? Um, do you how many countries total do you have right now as members or representatives? I would say, and then is the goal to continue growing?
Yeah, I mean, if I could just briefly say, the reason why we haven't really explored the US is that, this started as a European network,
Yeah.
and the European network is, the firms are relatively small compared to American standards. So what we're seeking in America is small to medium-sized practices that would be interested in joining the network. We've had a difficulty in the past of locating because you've got big entities, so they're not really interested in, in joining, small to medium-sized firms. So but our main point going forward, in my opinion, is expansion into Southeast Asia, particularly into India, which we think Indonesia, India, the countries of Southeast Asia are very important, and South America, the countries like Chile, Argentina were well covered, but South America and Southeast Asia and the US would be our three main target areas for future expansion.
Yeah, allow me to jump on that. Allow me to jump in. So why, if a potential member were interested in joining the organization, that it actually works the other way around. That is, a potential member is invited by somebody that already knows the firm, the prospective firm. However, they could definitely shoot us an email, and we can evaluate them. I did not know the other members of the management committee when I got on board, when I was invited by Domenic. I knew Domenic. Domenic was a friend before, but I only knew him, and I was vetted. They examined me. They thought that I was a good fit for International Jurists, and I hope I've not disappointed them way too much. But so if anyone that is listening, especially from the territories that Domenic mentioned, so Southeast Asia, South Asia with the Indian subcontinent, Latin America, and the US, we're interested in joining us. Send us an email, and we can evaluate that with a caveat. The most of the firms that are involved, or if not all of them, in the organization, they work primarily in corporate and commercial law in these fields of the law. So if you're entirely focused on, say, criminal law or family law or something different, perhaps we're not a good fit for you. But if you also cover some commercial aspects, yes. Now, if you also do family law, that doesn't hurt. If you also do litigation, that doesn't hurt at all. On the contrary, but there has to be a link with corporate and commercial. As far as the US, allow me to drop something. We should probably explore more, let's say, for lack of a better word, second-tier states. So it's easy or relatively easy to go to New York or California, but there are, even America is the economic backbone of the US is pretty much like that of everywhere else in the world. That is, you have small businesses, small entrepreneurs, and equally you have relatively small law firms. And so I believe that problems, challenges, solutions, feelings could be pretty much the same as though that we feel within International Jurists with our small or mid-sized firm and our equally relatively small clients, even though some of us do follow some large cases and have some well-structured and big firms. But I would assume that there are some companies out there in any of the other 48 states that I had not mentioned that are assisted by firms in these states that are quite similar to us. So hit us up.
Awesome. All right, gentlemen, thank you so much. So we're 30 minutes into this conversation about international jurists. And so hopefully people who are out there who might have an interest will reach out to you and learn more about international jurists. All right, so if you're listening to this and you're not watching, be sure to check out their website at internationaljurists.com. That's jurist with an S at the end.com. And Domenic Vasoli and Domenic Pini, thank you so much for the conversation today. I appreciate it. Looking forward to talking to you guys more and having more of your members coming on and educating the public. All right, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Mac. Thank you very much, Mac. Thank you.
Thank you, Mac.